So please welcome, and I know you're going to enjoy Michael Mapes, my friend.
So, thank you for that. I will try to live up to like 25% of that. So it's really, really good to be back in Minneapolis. I lived here for several years and came to Lake Harriet regularly when I lived here, not only as a speaker, but also, you know, sitting in the audience. It's really cool how much wisdom there is in this space, and if you just look to your left and look to your right, you are sitting next to some incredibly talented, gifted, wise, visionary people. I mean, there are people in this audience who have done 100 times, 200 times the things that I've done. They've accomplished 100, 200 times the things that I've accomplished. And so it's really a privilege to be back here. I know that because some of my clients are in the audience, some of my clients who actually came all the way to Kansas City to come to our 3-day live event, and they're back to hear me speak, which makes me happy. They're not like too irritated by the sound of my voice, so that's a good thing. But I also know that because you can feel it in the energy. I was standing outside with a few people before the service, and just really listening to them and having that very informal conversation. It's like a master's class in spiritual development. I love coming to Lake Harriet because there's something magical to me about this space, but I also love coming to Lake Harriet because when you speak for a living, like I do, whether it's speaking from stage or speaking to my clients and consulting or doing a group coaching call or recording something that I'm going to deliver, some of what happens in that is you start to feel an incredible pressure to actually have something to say and to have something new to say and to sort of marry things that are timeless, things that will always be true, and to go deeper on those with things that are contemporary and relevant to the moment. And I am a pretty prepared person and a pretty practiced person and a pretty systematic person, but every time I come here, there's something in me that feels called to raise the bar, which is a little bit frustrating for the systematic, prepared part of my personality, because it's always, what I end up talking about here is always a little bit different than what I think it will be when I sit down to really organize my thoughts and to put things into some kind of order that might be useful to all of you. And when I sat down to write this talk, because a lot of what I talk about in my business and in my work is how to really, create true wealth in your life. And I just define wealth as the ability to live the life that's most authentic to you without worrying about whether or not you'll have the resources to be able to do so. And I think spiritually we're all meant to live a very, very wealthy existence, a very abundant existence. However, you really define that for yourself, for your lives, based on your own unique set of values and unique set of principles that you choose to live by. But I started to kind of go a little bit broader than that, because part of what I see as being so important right now, not only for individual spiritual development, but for the spiritual development of our world, is it's time, I think, to evolve the conversation in some pretty important ways. It's like, where are we going next as a spiritual community? What the heck does it mean to be a spiritual community? What does it mean to be a spiritual person? What does that really look like? And I think these are really critical questions. And the reason they're critical questions is part of what Linda was talking about, which is that we're reaching a moment where there's a much more mass consciousness when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to spiritual principles. People are much more aware for a lot of reasons. People have been coming out of the closet doing this work the internet exists, so it's much easier to get access to information. You know, our politics has moderated in a bunch of ways, so we simply have more freedom. The traditional value system has been relaxed. But when you have a greater level of consciousness, when more people know about your stuff, right, then you get to a different place in your movement. Because your initial place in your movement is like, we gotta let people know about this, that this exists, that there's a different way to think, right? That you can choose to love yourself instead of degrade and reject and put yourself down. That you can choose to collaborate with amazing people instead of positioning yourself in conflict with those amazing people. That you can choose to really speak your individual truth. And so I think we're kind of at this moment where it's not just about the principles. It's like our movement has been kind of stuck up here, I think. It's been stuck in, we've got to let people know about this, and we've got to explain this, and we've got to start, you know, something that most people in this room will take to be true, right? That our thoughts create, or certainly at least contribute to our reality. It's like we've got to let people know. And so it's like this exercise in thinking. It's this exercise in mental energy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a fine place to start. But I think that now it's really time for a lived spirituality. It's not just about knowing the principles. It's really like, how do you apply those principles? How do you live those principles? You know, what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of energy do you want to embody? How do you want to show up? And I think that's really the work, if you will, of contemporary spirituality. How do we take all of this mass consciousness, all of this stuff we know about energy and alternative healing and intuition and getting information from outside sources, all of this stuff actually that, you know, ancient Sufi prophets knew and modern science is validating. So it's just the loop coming full circle. But how do we really take that from an intellectual thing into a very lived experience? And I'd just like to share with you ever so briefly, before I kind of offer you a couple of the ways that I've distilled down in my own life and through working with a lot of clients to really be able to live these principles, which for me is something that actually happens in your body. It's funny because spiritual people also tend to be very intellectual people. We like to read, we like to consume a lot of, you know, stuff, we like to go to classes, we like to travel and go to seminars, we like to, you know, learn the newest crystal healing, awesome energy, Reiki healing, intuitive thing, whatever it looks like, right? So we often spend a lot of time in knowledge and in learning. And then we spend a lot of time often in meditation or visualization, which are also, you know, very, very mental exercises to some degree. And yet, really living a spiritual life to me is about really being in your body. It's really about being really present in every fiber of your being, in every cell that you have. I have a friend who says that she spent the first 40 years of her life as a floating head, you know, going through her life. And that was certainly my experience, you know, when I was 18, 19, 20, which is why I had a ton of anxiety, a ton of stress. It's why I had a ton of drama in, you know, basically everything that I did. You won't think yourself into a happy life, just like you won't think yourself into success. You know, often many of the world's most successful people were told that they were, you know, stupid or lazy or not smart enough. But I believe you can live your way to success, and I believe you can live your way to spiritual fulfillment. So I think it's really about getting these principles in every core of our being, or perhaps remembering, you know, that which is already there. It's not like a coach or a healer, or like they can't give you something you don't have because you're not missing anything to begin with. They might be able to create certain conditions to help you think of things in a slightly different way, to, you know, be able to shift your thinking or help you get clear for a moment energetically so that something else can, you know, really come forward. But the self-help movement, the spiritual movement, it should not become about, thinking we need to, as my mentor would say, fix, change, or manipulate anything. Because we already have everything inherently that we need. So, but most of us, because we didn't, we weren't raised in like a perfect bubble of love and light and joy and peace. We had some experiences that kind of detracted us or distracted us from really being able to live a lot of these principles. And I think that's really, whether I'm working with somebody on growing their business or helping somebody create more abundance in, their established life, their established job, that really is the critical thing. How do you take what you understand intellectually and really put that into some kind of a lived experience? I'm very passionate about this because I've been drawn to self-help and spirituality and, new age, everything since I was about 12 or 13. And I grew up in a tiny town in Northwest Iowa, and so, that section of the library was like 3 books. It was like a Sylvia Browne book, a 12th century history of witchcraft, and so that was kind of the options. But even that showed me that there was a different way of thinking. Even that showed me that there was at least 3 other people in the world writing about stuff that wasn't really my experience or wasn't really what I heard being raised in a more traditionally religious environment. So I've always been drawn to this movement, but I have not always had a great life. And I think this is something that I certainly had to reconcile within my own life, and we absolutely have to reconcile with it as spiritual people and as a spiritual community, which is I took a lot of classes, I read every self-help book I could get my hands on, but my life didn't really change. I would feel better for a little while, oh, I got the new Wayne Dyer, I got the new Deepak Chopra, and I would consume it, and it was kind of like a glass of Chardonnay at the end of the day for me, It made me feel a little bit better. It kind of took me out of the drama and the stress and the thing that I was dealing with in my life. But my circumstances didn't improve, and really deep down, cosmetically, my thinking would change a little bit, right? Like, I'm gonna do all these affirmations or something. And cosmetically, but the deeper thing, the deeper wound, the deeper hurt, the deeper sense that I had that, in my case, you're just too different, you're too weird, you're too outside of the box, you haven't taken a traditional path, so all, a whole bunch of things in your life are foreclosed to you. That didn't really go away. And I think that's true for a lot of spiritual people, which is why we have a lot of wounded healers in the world at the moment. It's why we have a lot of people saying, I want to help other people, which is really about just beginning a journey to help yourself. If you feel called to help to other people, it's because there's some part of you that also needs healing. And that doesn't mean don't help other people or that that's bad. It's a perfectly fine way to get there, but we just have to kind of understand what's happening. And that's something that I really struggled with, right? Like, I'm trying to do the work, and I'm reading these books, and I'm going to these services, and I'm doing the teachings. Why the hell is nothing changing? Why am I not getting anywhere? Why do I have this overwhelming sense that there's more potential inside of me? There's so much inside of me, and yet it just does not translate to my bank account, to the relationships that I have in my life, to my energy level, to a whole lot of other things in my existence. And what I would like to do today is really offer you kind of 5 strategies or 5 principles that you can sort of use in your own life to be able to take a lot of what you know and really put that into something that makes your life better. And these are really strategies that that I've put to use in my life and the use of the lives of my clients. And these, to me, because there's a lot of classes and stuff on like how to get what you want, right? Like how to get what you want, like how to like manifest this or manifest that. And I teach a very similar vein in my business, right? How to get clients, how to make money, how to leverage your time, how to scale, how to, it's like these are not bad things. It's not bad to have goals and values and visions and whatever for your life. But the thing about that is there are always going to be intervening factors, right? There are always going to be things that come up that are unexpected. There are always going to be things that are out of your control. So it's kind of like best laid plans, right? And I think a lot of what I see is that people feel spiritual when they're getting what they want, when they're like, my manifesting is working, and then they feel like unspiritual when they're not. That's not really sustainable, and it doesn't actually give you a great life. It definitely gives you a better life than just being a victim. It definitely gives you a better life of being a victim, right? Because you're going after things and you're thinking about things and you're working. So it's a total step up from that. But I don't believe it's the highest place that you can go to. Because I think if we're being honest, it's not too hard to feel spiritual or happy when things are going the way that you think they need to go. It's really hard to feel spiritual when everything falls apart, when you don't get what you want, when you think a door is closed. But that's like, it's like, isn't that the moment, or aren't those the moments where we need to summon it the most? And this is really what my journey, I think, has been about. Not the fact that I've made a bunch of money, and not the fact that I have a bunch of clients, and not the fact, that I wrote a book. Like, those are awesome. And from a human perspective, that gives me a totally great life that it's like I said to Valerie, who's my business manager, the other day, I was like, I just kind of like have to pinch myself like pretty regularly at this point. But the deeper thing about it all is the daily richness. The daily quality of my life is so much richer than it was. I am happier. I am more fulfilled. I am filled with a sense of everything is going to be okay, no matter what. Because there are days when the client's mad. There are days when people quit. There are days when the invoice that you think is going to come through doesn't come through, and the investment you need to make has to get delayed. Like, that happens. And from a human perspective, it sucks, and it can bring up emotion, and we should absolutely feel those emotions. Stop running from, feeling unpleasant for 2 seconds like it's going to kill us. Not feeling it will kill you, because that's stress, actually, but feeling it won't. So that, I think, to me, is really what's possible. And what's cool about that, it's immeasurable, right? Whereas obviously clients and money and book sales, is very measurable, and that's important for living in a human world, which we do. But it's kind of the immeasurable things that really stay with you. That's really what lasts. And I think what's cool about the daily richness, the daily fulfillment, is you don't plateau. Right? It's not like, it's like, oh, now I've arrived and I've just got, I'm at 85% fulfillment and that's all we can do, right? That's all the fulfillment NASDAQ will allow. No, there's always another level. There's always another place to go. There's always something new to experience. There's always more joy to harvest. Think about that for a second. It's like, think of your best day, where you were just there and present and happy and it was working. And no, you only got a fraction, even in that best moment, of what was available to you. This, to me, is the next level of spiritual development. It's the next evolution in our community. And that, my goal, which I doubt I will see in my lifetime or this lifetime, is that becomes the norm, the default, the automatic. because so many of us have had to fight and claw and crawl our way through mud and sticks and barbed wire to get to just a little bit of that. Because we have trauma and pain and stuff that really has to be healed. So my goal is that, the next generation, the generation after that, it just becomes a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And it's the compound effect. It's the tipping effect, and then one day, someone, somewhere will wake up and, we will have arrived. So the first thing that I think is really important when you're coming to really having an experience of a lived spirituality. And for me, a lived spirituality is, did I do the best I can? It's quite simple. It's not, am I Jesus today? Or am I Buddha? We had a fabulous speaker at Wealth Creation Live, and she was talking about, Mother Teresa and renouncing all of her possessions, and she was like, I'm not that spiritual yet. And I think that that's not the measure. We're all going to fall pretty short, if we're comparing ourselves to the self-actualized yogi on the hill. But if we look at who we were to who we are, that's the growth, that's the gap. That's where it's very easy, even if you're having a bad day, to get grateful. Because it's not necessarily as you up-level in your life, or when I work with people, you up-level in your business, you don't stop getting challenges. If anything, sometimes the higher you get, the bigger the challenge can be. Your capacity to deal with it is also much greater, and your capacity to move through it is much closer. I love the book The Alchemist, and one of the things that it says in there is, the closer you get to your treasure, the more likely it is that it'll be denied to you. I see this all the time in business, and I think this is true in life. People are right on the verge. They are right on the verge of making the money, of getting the success, of totally changing their life, and they stop. Because things get really hard before that moment, and you can't see it, right? You can't see it. You've got blinders, and so you don't see that all these things you've been doing is working, because it hasn't all quite clicked together yet. But it will, and that's why I think it is so important, and I think why this community is so amazing is to have some of those tools that you can employ, whether it's meditation or journaling or EFT tapping or Reiki healing or quantum touch or acupuncture, whatever it is, that you have a place to go to so that you can keep going, When you grow up being a gay psychic, most people think you're pretty crazy. And nobody thinks you'll really do much with that. But that's a huge gift, because the only person you have is you. So you learn how to believe in yourself. You learn how to hold on to your vision when nobody else is going to hold on to it. So I think the first thing we really need to do is we need to bridge the gap between theory and practice. We really need to take a lot of what we know to be spiritually true and start applying it to our daily lives. And to be frank, we need to start to move past some of the spiritual cliches. They're cliches for a reason, because they have a lot of lessons and learning and teaching in them. But sometimes I see that we, even as spiritual people, we want the easy answer. We want to be able to say something to someone, right? Like, oh, it happened for a reason. Oh, it's not the right timing. Oh, we're all connected. Those are all deeply, deeply true principles, by the way. But the thing is, we have to go and really look at, okay, so what does that mean? What difference does it make in the choices that we make, in the actions that we decide to take, if we are truly all connected? Not just in our own lives. I mean, what does that mean socially? What does that mean politically? What does that mean institutionally? What does that mean for our businesses? Sometimes as spiritual people, because we've been very mistreated by the institutions of our age, our impulse is to disconnect from them. Our impulse is to pull away from them. And all that does is keep the exact wrong people in charge of those institutions and the exact wrong thinking as the default mode of being in those institutions. It's like a lot of spiritual people that I work with have tons of issues around money. So I always remind them that if spiritual people don't work through their issues with money, the same assholes are going to keep having the money. So we've really got to start to move beyond the cliche and think some of this through, right? What does this mean for some of the decisions in our own life? If it's really true that we can manifest anything that we want, then why are so many of us still making choices based on what we think is available to us, or what we think we're most likely to get, or what we think we're worth achieving? Why are we grasping at straws so often in our life if truly the world is available to us at any moment? So we really have to think this through. We're only at like the beginning of this conversation, truly. So I have I don't know what all of that will look like. I don't know how all of that will play out, but I do think it's very important to start having that conversation. I mean, if everything really happens for a reason, what does that say about the need to bitch and moan and complain and whine about things in your life versus harvesting the gifts and getting the learning from those things? So we've got to be able to think through how some of the principles that we know, because here's the thing, like, I always say to people, like, building a multiple six, or even 7 or multiple 7-figure business is not that hard. Learning, there are tons of people that can teach you the steps. There are tons of people that can teach you marketing. There are tons of people that can teach you how to sell. Like, it's not that difficult. The difficult thing is getting up and acting on that every day. Doing it every day. That's the hard part, because you have to stretch and grow in that. You have to expand your container for what you are capable of holding and receiving. You have to learn how to take responsibility for your existence. And that is going to trigger you at every step. But the same is true with spirituality. The principles are not exceedingly difficult. I mean, a child could understand them. I mean, a simple ant colony, right, in my view, seems to exercise it more, a greater sense of community sometimes than humanity. So the principles, right, like love is better than fear, collaboration is better than conflict, forgiveness is better than grievance. We know this. We've heard the message so many times, in so many ways. But how do we bridge the gap from hearing the message and embodying and living the message? The second thing that I think is really important, and I've become kind of militant and rigid on this, is I really think you need to commit to creating a lived spirituality in your life. And I personally know no better way to do that than to have a daily spiritual practice. Commitment also means that you commit to making time for it. None of you are too busy to do the spiritual stuff. First off, when you do the spiritual stuff, you have more time. But secondly, the spiritual stuff is the most practical stuff that you can do, because it helps you show up to all the practical stuff in a completely different space. So for me, it's like, find that daily spiritual practice. For me, it's usually reading something in the morning. My particular thing I really like is A Course in Miracles, but it doesn't really matter, right? Whether it's Marianne Williamson or Deepak Chopra or Wayne Dyer, or, you know, that's a great way to start your day. Whether it's prayer and meditation, whether it's guided visualization and meditation, whether it's doing some EFT tapping, whether it's journaling, but I think it's really so important to commit to that. And commitment means you follow through. To me, this is the best gift I give myself. And it's always the days that I really do not feel like doing it that it becomes the most rewarding to do it. The ego is insidious. You know, as one of my spiritual teachers, Derek Rydell, would say, the whole job of the ego is to convince you that you're changing when you're really not. So it's insidious, right? It's not doing that to punish us. It's doing that, giving us an opportunity to make a different choice, an opportunity to follow through on our commitments, but we don't see it like that. So then it's like, oh, well, I'll get to it tomorrow. Ooh, I really have to dive right into my billion emails this morning, and whatever the thing is. But I think to me, that's the gift you give yourself. That's the gift you give your vision. Find a way to make it non-negotiable. Find a way to make it non-negotiable. And find a way to make it fun and creative for you. I mean, I think if you can get into a little bit of game playing sometimes in your life, instead of making everything so serious, then it becomes a lot more joyful for you. You know, maybe you just simply hang up a couple affirmation posters or a couple gratitude posters, you know, someplace you know that you're gonna see them. So even if you are rushing out, or, you know, the kids or whatever the kids are in that moment, or whatever craziness is happening, that you see it and you're triggered to be reminded. It's weird because there's any number of things that trigger us on the negative side, right? All of the time. So I think we've got to start to infuse our lives with things that trigger some of the positives, some of the more transcendent in us as well. The third thing is you absolutely have to practice in a million small ways and a million small actions. You know, because I help people build their businesses, and specifically people with really big visions for their lives, one of the things that I hear a lot is, I want to be on Oprah, and I want 5 million people to buy my book, and I want sold out rooms of people to be listening to me speak, and, you know, and it's like, okay, that's all great, but that's the end result, right? Like, that's the end result of a great marketing plan that you implement day after day after day after day after day, when nobody thinks you can do it, when nobody believes in you, before you've got a lot of money, before you have a team. And I think it's that same thing in our lives. Right? We want all this fulfillment and satisfaction and joy, but that's the result of being kind when nobody's looking. That's the result of choosing to forgive somebody when it would be so much easier to hold on to being pissed off. That's the end result of feeling your shadows and feeling your wounds and allowing some of that stuff that hurts to come out. It's the result. And the thing is, it's the inevitable result of it. Because there's a rule book to the universe. It's not like, if you do this work, you might have a better life. If you do this work, you will have a better life. Period. Period. So I think we've got to practice in the small actions. This is alignment. I know that word gets thrown around a lot to mean nearly everything, from what I can tell for some people in the spiritual world, but what it means is that the actions that you are taking are really congruent, are really in line with where you want to be. You know, I see this in business all of the time, right? It's like, I want all these clients, but I won't go to a networking meeting. I want all these clients, but I don't want to pick up the phone. I want all these clients, right? And I think we do that a lot in our lives. I want my body to look a certain way, or I want to have this kind of a relationship, but I don't want to put myself out there. You know, I want this perfect soulmate, but I don't want to date anybody to have to find him. So we've got to really look at, you know, in my business, I say you will find everything you need to know about why you are successful or not in how you manage one single day of your life. If you are moving around appointments instead of following through, if you are saying, I'll get the help that I need tomorrow, right? And we do this in all areas of our life, not just business. This is hard. This was so hard for me because it means you have to look in the mirror, right? It's like, you know what? At some point, it's not your parents. It's not your circumstances. It's not the job that you have. It's not the fact that you had it hard. At some point, it's just you. Because at some point, you've enabled that to become your default. That was certainly what I did. And that's hard, because then you have to take the next step to starting to change. It's actually way harder to not do that. It's way harder to not do that, but the process of moving through that can be really challenging. The fourth thing that we have to do is really start to see the opportunity instead of the obstacle. Now, this is not just about, oh, I'll only turn my attention to the good. I think it's really important as spiritual people that we don't get into denialism. And I love the way that Marianne Williamson phrases this when she says, what you authentically feel in any given moment is not who you authentically are. We can authentically be irritated, angry, upset, hurt, jealous, feel like we're betrayed. As one of the coaches on my team, Deborah Larson, would say, our pain is just whispering the secrets of the universe to us all the time, all the time. But we run from feeling those emotions, or we think, we pervert the law of attraction principles and go, oh, I'm just gonna shove those down and think about all these good things. Someone said at an event that we went to, just don't use the word not. It's like, well, maybe you should look at why the word not is so highly triggering to you. Because that's actually the deeper learning. Or when people come to me and they're like, I'm just gonna call this an enrollment conversation, not a sales conversation. Maybe you should look at why you're so deeply triggered by using the word sales. You've got to look at why that's bringing something up for you, right? And then you can make the conscious choice to really redirect your energy toward the positive, toward what you want. But you've got to go through some of the shadows, right? You've got to go through some of the more negative, unpleasant experiences. Doesn't have to take you a lifetime, though, to do this. Doesn't have to take you often. Just sitting with those feelings for a few minutes versus running away from them will allow them to start to dissipate, will allow them to start to fade. So I think it's really important that we start to strive to see the opportunity, right? Because I really believe obstacles or opportunities are the same thing, but how we relate to them determines how we see them. You know, Napoleon Hill was writing about this in Think and Grow Rich in the 30s. He said people have opportunities to create success all the time, but the problem is those opportunities often come disguised as misfortune. You know, a few years ago, I was living in my mom's basement broke, working a telemarketing job for $8 an hour. I didn't see a lot of opportunity out of that. But I started doing some of this work, applying the principles, and I realized there were these opportunities all around, all the time, if only I would start to say yes to them. It can't just be, if I judge a situation to be good, it's an opportunity, and if I judge a situation to be bad, it's an obstacle. It has to be, it's all an opportunity. And this doesn't mean we passively accept the suffering of our world. It's not, oh, there's a genocide in Sudan, there must be a reason for that. It's, oh, there's a genocide in Sudan, who do I need to become? What might I do to help alleviate needless suffering? So we've got to start to see the opportunities not only in our own life, but the opportunities in our world. I think what is both highly frustrating and highly amazing is that we have the ability to solve every problem we have in our world right now. We have not created any problem that we do not also have a requisite solution for. We could actually solve all of the environmental problems that we have, all of the hunger problems that we have, all of the violence that we have. We may not have a will to collectively at this moment as a world, but that's very different from we don't have the ability or the resources to. And how often is that same thing true in our own life? That really, if we were being honest, really if we went toward and took the actions and did the things that we knew would really get us to where we want to be, we would change our lives. It's not like maybe it might possibly change, it would. We may or may not be willing to do that, and often we're not willing because we've been very damaged. But that's not the same thing as you don't have the opportunity or you don't have the availability to make something different in your life. And the final thing, which I think ties so nicely for being at a place like this, is really get out into your world and be involved and take action. You know, it is true that we are human beings, and as such, you know, our job is to become, but it is also true that we are human doings. There is a reason we are having a human experience. We are meant to interact with our world. We are meant to be in this reality. We are meant to touch other people. So whatever your thing is, for me, it's really in the form of giving. I mean, charitable giving, whether it's my time or whether it's with my checkbook, it's so rewarding. And it always gives me, 100 times whatever I write the check. It just it just comes back in such amazing ways. Find your thing that you love to give to, and you can all give. You can all give. I have a client who runs a fashion company called Vogue Couture out of New York. It's an all-vegan, the first all-vegan fashion line in the world. And she started an experiment where she just started giving money to homeless people, just walking down the street, and if she had money, she just started giving it to homeless people. And if she didn't have money, she gave food. And she got to this moment where she had no money and she had no food. And she came across this homeless guy, and she just stopped for a minute, and he told some stupid joke, and she laughed at it. And then later she saw him panhandling on the subway, and she said, I'm sorry, I just don't have, I don't have anything else that I can give you. And he goes, you've already given me the best thing. You listened to me, and that smile is the best thing that you could have given me today. So we all have a lot that we can give. I really do not think spirituality will have succeeded if it becomes a solely narcissistic endeavor, if it becomes something that's only about looking inward. It's like look inward to go outward in a different way, right? Look inward to go outward in the world in a different way, and find that way to get involved. If that's starting a big visionary business or the world's first vegan fashion line, great. If that's being really nice to people as you ride the bus, that's not better or worse. And I think that we have to really start looking at how can I take the shifted and transformed content of my own thoughts and emotions? Because so many of you have been through a heart transformation, or maybe many heart transformations when you look back in your life. It's like, how can I bring that out into the world? And it's not about becoming the master of someone else's destiny. It's not about proselytizing or trying to control the choices and decisions that another person makes, but it's really thinking about how can I take this unlimited well of spiritual wisdom and spiritual energy and take that and put that out into the world. So for me, I think it is important to really get into the doing of our lives, really get into the action of our lives. One of my favorite philosophers and spiritual teachers is Krishnamurti, and the bulk of his teaching is that, action, that we're not truly taking action, that action is usually just a reaction to other circumstances in our world or other wounds and traumas that we've been through. But when you do spiritual work, you start, for many of us, to actually get free will for the first time in your life, because you're no longer just being battered around by your circumstances. You're no longer just being battered around by your traumas, wounds, and difficulties of your past. Until you start to do some of that work and really look at your upbringing, some of your shadows, why you react negatively to certain situations, you don't have a very high degree of free will in your life. It's like when, for me, I got in my relationship with my husband, and all these elements of my parents started coming out that I didn't even know were there, right? Because the circumstances and I didn't like some of those elements very much that were coming up, and I was like, I'm pretty aware and I'm pretty conscious, and why, and I really had to go back and look at some things so that I could kind of hit the reset button and go back into that relationship. There were things I didn't even know that had an impact on me or that I had internalized until I got into that relationship. And now all of a sudden the circumstances were present to allow it to come out. So I think it's just so important, whether it's giving to a community like this. And you guys, it's automate it. If it's especially if it's giving money, it's become a recurring, I sound like an NPR ad right now. We need to meet our hourly goal. But seriously, it's for me, I had a client the other day who said, every time, the payment comes out for you, I feel so good because that's what I give myself. And I started thinking about that, right? If we stop thinking, Linda will tell you, where you can see your bills as, or you can see it as an invitation not to attend the fear party. And I think it's what if we started looking at things a little bit differently, right? It's not, ooh, this money is coming out, I have to give this. It's oh my God, how privileged am I that I can give, even $5 or $10 a month. And certainly, more if your means and your resources allow for that. And for me, when I see that come out, I just think yeah, this is really, really, really great. And it may not be changing the world overnight, but it's like chipping away. You know, become a monthly volunteer. There's so many ways that you can do this, or commit to doing something kind and a little bit more loving than you did the day before. You know, it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be charity. That's just my pet thing for me that I really like. So I think that it's so important that we kind of really, really take the principles and find a way to start living them. And it's my hope that you'll take, you know, one or two things from this, one or two strategies, things that you can start doing, and really integrate them and really commit to them and really choose to believe that they're making a difference in your life and the difference in the world, you know, whether or not you can see it or whether or not everything shifts for you overnight. Because to me, that's truly the next step in our evolution as a spiritual community, but also in our evolution as a planet. So I really want to thank you all so much for having me, and so many blessings to all of you. So if you just take a minute to close your eyes and take a couple deep breaths in, and deep breaths out. And really just connect to the energy of everyone in this room, of everyone who's been in this space. And really know, we'll just take a moment to feel the good. You know, really, really how much good there is in this room, how much wisdom there is in this room, how much good there is on the planet, how much good there is in life. And know that wherever you are, everyone in this room, right, is really, really conspiring, really helping you on conscious levels, on unconscious levels, to move through any places where you might be stuck, to move through any places where you might perceive that you have a struggle in your life. And in the same vein, send out some energy to everyone else in the circle. And really support them, and just intend and just know that the energy is going to go wherever it needs to go, to whomever it needs to go. It's going to show up in whatever form is best. And just spend a couple moments in the knowledge that everything is going to be okay, everything is right, everything is moving into alignment for you to have the best life for you, the life that supports your spiritual development, the life that supports your personal level of fulfillment and satisfaction. And no, it's not about the words, it's really just about feeling the energy. And allow that energy to really go from your head down into your body, into your solar plexus, and really, really spreading out into every fiber of your being. And just feel the shift that happens when you do that, when you choose to take the energy out of your mind, out of your thoughts, out of your brain, and really ground it and center it in your body and in your being. And take note of the feeling, how you feel in your body. And just really know that wherever you are, in the most stressful situations that you'll be faced with this week, that you'll be faced with in the future, that at any moment you can go right back here and make the choice that you need to make. Whenever you're ready, just come back to consciousness and open your eyes.